Bit 16, you've never seen a review like this. Weird old games you cannot tame, this world that you miss. SNES Man is the champion, he is 16-bit. SNES Man is the champion, he is 16-bit.
Hello, my name is SNES Man. Today we're going to talk about Street Fighter, one of the most popular fighting game series of all time. Now, the original Street Fighter for the arcade wasn't a big success, just a simplistic little fighting game that not many people heard about. It had some cool ideas, but it never went anywhere with them. The sequel, however, was a huge deal in the gaming world. It was a hit on the arcades, on the Sega Genesis, and of course on the Super Nintendo. Since I'm SNES Man, this is the only version I care about. Let's get down to gaming and see if it's still as glorious as everyone remembers. Here's our title screen, Street Fighter II: The World Warrior. This game is one of the first popular one-on-one fighting games. It's pretty simple. Choose a character from your oh-so-enormous list of 8 characters, travel around the world, and beat everyone you meet up into a bloody pulp. Good old kid-friendly Nintendo, it's all hugs and rainbows with them. Who should we pick? Let's choose the main character of the game, Ryu. I get a headache when people argue over how to pronounce his name, so please, don't start a blood feud in my comments section over if his name is Ryu or Ryu. It's almost as bad as the Smash Bros. Melee versus Melee arguments. You can never win those. But never mind. Let's fight! Here's a duel between Ryu and Ken, the main characters of the game. Street Fighter II was ahead of its time. Before this, the idea of fighting one enemy at a time and focusing on special moves and combos was completely new. There's a lot of variety to your attacks because you have 3 different levels of punches and kicks from soft to hard. The downside to using hard attacks is that they're slower and leave you more vulnerable if you miss. Each character has a different way of punching and kicking, so it always feels like a fresh experience when you play as them. For instance, Dalsim's limbs can extend grotesquely far every time he attacks. That's the complete opposite of the Russian wrestler Zangief with his stubby arms. This variety is one of the reasons I really like the Street Fighter series a lot more than Mortal Kombat. The cast of characters in Street Fighter is really solid. True, Ryu and Ken are exactly the same in everything but appearance, but the rest of these guys are pretty diverse. Guile is an American military meathead. Zangief is a smelly wrestler. E Honda is a smelly sumo wrestler. Dalsim is a stretchy Indian dude. Blanca is basically a green Donkey Kong with electricity powers, and Chun-Li is the token woman of the cast. And there you have the famous Street Fighter lineup. Despite the kind of simplistic graphics that definitely look like an early Super Nintendo game, all the characters actually look pretty nice and it's easy to tell them apart. They all have a couple special moves at their disposal. Easily the most famous is Ryu and Ken's fireball attack, the Hadouken. The whole fighting system revolves around moves like this because they're powerful and interesting, kind of like superpowers, and they're just plain fun to use. The controls are tight in the Super Nintendo version, so pulling off Shoryukens and spinning bird kicks and Hadoukens and whatnot isn't too difficult. It's a simple enough fighting system that you can learn how to play quickly, but it's also deep enough to satisfy expert players who are looking for a complex experience. Capcom used to hold big tournaments with this game, and contestants would come up with all kinds of combos and intricate maneuvers that would make our heads hurt nowadays. The multiplayer aspect has always been a big part of the Street Fighter series because it's a lot more fun to fight with your friend than a pre-programmed computer. If you're playing solo, then your only option is the arcade mode where you journey around the world, pulverizing your enemies in a fighting tournament. Believe it or not, this was actually a new idea at the time. After this, every 90s fighting game ripped off of this formula and had a worldwide tournament in their main arcade mode. So after you beat all the main characters in the tournament, you have 4 boss battles. This is where the game actually gets pretty hard. These guys have reflexes of steel, and the AI actually isn't half bad for a 16-bit game. Now, is this the perfect fighting game? Well, no. For one, the game speed in the Super Nintendo version is a little sluggish, so it's not like you're fighting at a breakneck pace. Also, the sound effects that everyone still loves today are admittedly pretty cheesy and dated. It sounds like they hired one guy to do all the male voices.
Round 1, fight!
You should be glad that I don't talk like that announcer in my reviews.
My name is SNES Man, and I'm reviewing Street Fighter II.
What excellent sound effects. How not primitive sounding. The music is another story though. They made a song for every character, and I have to say that all the themes are excellent. My personal favorite is Ken's theme because it's the catchiest one. All I have to say is that Ken Masters is one classy dude. The songs all fit the mood perfectly while still keeping the energy level high. Things to make it better. A faster game speed. Better sound effects. They sound pretty silly in retrospect. A few more special moves per character to make things interesting. And better graphics, especially in the backgrounds where the people look really stiff. Those are some of my gripes about the World Warrior, but it's still a great fighting game that started an excellent series. On my scale, it scores an 8 out of 10. But wait, we're not done. There were 2 sequels to this game on the Super Nintendo, Street Fighter II Turbo and Super Street Fighter II The New Challengers. Well, calling them sequels isn't very accurate since they're more of re-releases, kind of like the Call of Duty series does nowadays, but still, they're worth mentioning. The first re-release, Street Fighter II Turbo, had 2 notable improvements. The game speed is faster, and you can play as the 4 boss characters this time, so you have 12 fighters to choose from instead of 8. It's not an enormous change though, it just makes the bosses less exciting when you have to fight them, because at that point you'll say, oh, that guy's not scary, I can play as him whenever I want. The graphics look pretty much the same, and the sound effects are just as awkward. So back in the day, it would have been a kind of dumb idea to buy this one for $60 if you already had the first Street Fighter II. I would give it a 9 out of 10 because it's an improvement, but that's a low, begrudging 9. The next re-release, Super Street Fighter II, is also a pretty minor improvement. I admit the graphics are a little better this time. You do get a fancy intro cutscene where Ryu shoots a Hadouken at you. Don't be scared though, I'm pretty sure it doesn't come out of the screen and hit you. Anyway, the other change this edition makes is a couple new characters, 4 of them to be exact. These guys are really forgettable, like Fei Long, the Bruce Lee clone, and Thunderhawk, the generic racist interpretation of Native Americans. I didn't really enjoy playing as any of them. They're not that great of an addition to the series. I would give this edition a 9 out of 10 as well, because it preserves the great game that Street Fighter II is, but it doesn't bring much to the table. If you've never played any of these games, I suggest that you buy Super Street Fighter II The New Challengers, because it's technically the best of the bunch, but the difference is relatively small. If you already have one of the older versions, just stick with that and keep your money. So that's Street Fighter II, and this has been a SNES Man review. I hope you liked it. But before I go, I'll leave you with a ridiculous version of Ken's theme that I made. Masters, and I will decimate you if you try to ever stand in my way. Your continues have just run out. I seek the victory, the prize, a fighting man with burning eyes. You try to stand in my way, but my fireball roasts you alive. Bison, here's some advice for you. Bow down. True comrade in arms, and when it's round 2 and time to fight, Hadoukens will light the night. We have no fear anymore, and when the streets are red, aim for the head. They'll never take you down. Don't take me alive.